When One Piece finally ends, the Straw Hats will be the most wanted pirates in history. But just how high will their bounties climb? In this video, I will be predicting the Straw Hat Pirates' final bounties at the end of One Piece and what number I think they end at. I've got some hot takes in this video, so stick around to find out who it is. But for now, we'll start with the first bounty, which is going to be Tony Chopper. Chopper might honestly be the hardest Straw Hat to judge when it comes to his final bounty. Why? Because his bounty has always been treated as a joke. From 50 berries to just 1,000 berries, the world government continues to see him as nothing more than the cute pet of the Straw Hat Pirates, even though we know he's much more than that. So here's how I see it. If Oda keeps the gag going all the way until the end, Chopper might top out at only 1 million berries. It makes sense for the gag and what we've been seeing with Chopper's bounty so far, but if Oda decides to finally give Chopper the respect that he deserves, I think his bounty could reach some crazy numbers. Remember, we're talking end of series Chopper, with his medical brilliance, monster point, and potentially even an awakening of his devil fruit or haki. I think he could realistically be valued anywhere from 600 to 700 million berries by the end of One Piece. And if he does awaken his devil fruit or get haki, maybe he sneaks up a little bit further and flirts with the billion range. This might be a long shot, but it's my prediction for Chopper. If Chopper's bounty is this unpredictable, just imagine when we get to the Straw Hats who the world government already fear. And it starts with none other than Usopp. Usopp's bounty might be just as strange as Chopper's, but for a completely different reason. Unlike Chopper, whose bounty has been treated as a joke, Usopp's has been inflated way beyond what he's actually done. After Dressrosa, his bounty jumped to 200 million berries because of the God Usopp moment. Then after Wano, his bounty skyrocketed all the way to 500 million, despite the fact that he didn't do much of anything in the Wano arc. And here's where it gets interesting, because Usopp's bounties always seem to mirror one of Luffy's former bounties. Think about it. Luffy's first bounty was 30 million. Even Usopp had a little appearance in the corner there. But then later in the story, Usopp's first bounty was also 30 million. Luffy hit 500 million after Dressrosa. And then after Wano, Usopp's bounty hit 500 million. So there's a little pattern here between Luffy's old bounties and Usopp's newer bounties. If that continues, I expect Usopp's bounty to absolutely explode by the end of the series. And realistically, I think Usopp could end up at 1.5 billion berries. But he's already at 500 million. So 1.5 billion could happen after Elbaf for all we know. If we're talking end of series, depending on how far away that is, Usopp could end up at 3 billion because that mirrors Luffy's bounty right now. Yes, I know that sounds absurd, but my prediction is either 1.5 billion or 3 billion for Usopp. All right, let's move on from Usopp and continue over to Nami. Unlike some of the other Straw Hats, Nami's bounty has never been about overwhelming strength or terrifying abilities. She's not the kind of fighter the world government sees as a direct threat. And she also doesn't hold any secret information like some of the other Straw Hats do. Instead, her value comes from her role as the crew's brain on the seas. Without Nami, the Thousand Sunny wouldn't even make it across half the oceans they've traveled. After Wano, Nami's bounty rose to 366 million berries, which is already a huge leap compared to her past numbers, but looking forward, I don't see her bounty climbing into the billions like some of her crewmates will. And realistically, I expect Nami to end up around 600 million berries by the end of One Piece, potentially being the lowest ending bounty out of all the Straw Hats. It's still impressive, but just won't be on the same scale as everyone else. Next, we've got the Soul King himself, Brook. Similar to Nami, Brook isn't seen as one of the top fighters within the Straw Hat crew. And unlike Nico Robin, he doesn't have any secret information that the world government is trying to get their hands on. Now, there's always a chance that Oda reveals something deeper about Brook's ties to the underworld or even his past pirate life, but as of now, he's more of a mid-tier threat in the eyes of the government. So because of that, I'm not going to give him a crazy high end of series bounty. After Wano, Brook's bounty jumped all the way from 83 million to 383 million, a huge leap of 300 million total. But looking forward to the end of the series, and based on pretty much zero information, I think Brook's bounty will settle around 853 million berries. That's going to put him above Nami and Chopper, and overall, this just feels right for Brook. It also ends in a 3 because his previous bounties also ended in 3. To put things into perspective, this bounty puts him about the same level as Cracker's bounty right now. End of series Brook being about Cracker level strength, Sure. Now let's talk about the shipwright of the crew, Franky. Franky's not just the man who built the Thousand Sunny, he's also an incredible mechanic and fighter in his own right. But what really sets Franky apart from the rest of the crew is the secret he holds, the blueprints to Pluton, one of the ancient weapons the world government desperately wants to gain control of. Even though he burned the blueprints back at Water 7, the knowledge of Pluton is still in his head, and that alone makes him an enormous target for the world government. After Wano, Franky's bounty climbed from 94 million to 394 million berries, but I personally think he's one of the secret candidates to get a massive bounty boost later on. Between his connection to Pluton and the fact that he picked up some of Vegapunk's knowledge during the Egghead arc, Franky's importance is only going to rise. So by the end of One Piece, I predict Franky's final bounty to end around 1.54 billion berries. This is more than Marco and King's current bounties, which I know is a lot, but this is my hot take for the video, so I'm putting my faith into Franky. If you think his is high, just wait until we get to the final few Straw Hats. Alright, moving on to Nico Robin. Robin's bounties have always been tied less to her strength and more to her knowledge. After Wano, she received a massive leap from 130 million berries all the way to 930 million berries, and that spike was all about one thing: her ability to read the poneglyphs. To the world government, Robin represents the biggest threat of all, the truth about the Void Century and the potential to uncover the location of the ancient weapons and the One Piece. That 800 million jump was the government's way of officially acknowledging her importance, and because of that, I don't see Robin getting any more insane increases like we just saw, because she just had that 800 million increase. Instead, I think her bounty will gradually rise and then ultimately settle around 1.73 billion berries, a number that reflects her status as the key to the world's forbidden history without pushing her into the same tier as the crew's primary fighters. If Robin's bounty is from her knowledge, just wait, because we got the powerhouses of the Straw Hat crew coming up. And that brings us to the helmsman of the crew, Jinbe. After Wano, Jinbe's bounty shot up from 438 million to a massive 1.1 billion berries, officially cementing him as one of the top fighters of the Straw Hats, third in line only behind Luffy and Zoro. That boost wasn't just about Wano though. It was also recognition of Jinbe's history as a former warlord of the sea, a veteran fighter, and a respected figure across the oceans. The question now is whether or not Jinbe keeps climbing at that same pace. And I don't really think so. He won't get as many outrageous raises as like Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji will, but he will definitely continue to be viewed as a serious threat by the government, so he will probably keep this third or fourth highest bounty range. I was looking at current bounty comparisons, and someone like Crocodile sits at 1.965 billion, and I think Jinbe will end around that level or even slightly higher. So by the end of the series, I predict Jinbe's bounty to settle at 2.1 billion berries. This solidifies him as one of the most notorious pirates in the world and the ultimate representation of Fishman Island, which we know is very important. Alright, now we're getting to the good stuff, the final three. And first up of the monster trio, we got Sanji. Sanji's bounty has been a running joke in One Piece ever since the beginning. From his first wanted poster with the badly hand-drawn sketch that didn't even look like him, to later posters where his face was finally revealed, only for the photo to always show him with literal heart eyes. So far, he still has yet to have a serious bounty. But as funny as his bounties have been, Sanji's numbers tell a different story. He's one of the most dangerous fighters in the crew. After Wano, Sanji's bounty jumped nearly a billion berries from 330 million to 1.032 billion, putting him firmly in that billion berry club, which very few pirates are at. Sanji's strength is continuing to grow and evolve, especially after unlocking his Germa genes. I think Sanji is destined for one of the highest bounties in the history of One Piece, so I'm predicting Sanji to end at a bounty of 3.3 billion berries. That makes him one of the most wanted pirates ever, with only a handful of people actually having a bounty above that number. Alright, second to last, we have the second-hand man of the Straw Hat Pirates, Zoro. After Wano, Zoro's bounty skyrocketed from 320 million all the way up to 1.111 billion berries. One of the single largest jumps we have ever seen in the series. And it makes sense. Zoro is an insanely fierce fighter whose dream is to become the world's strongest swordsman. For him to achieve that goal, his final bounty has to reflect it. Right now, the current strongest swordsman, Dracula Mihawk, carries a bounty of 3.59 billion berries. And if Zoro is destined to surpass him, then his number has to climb even higher. By the end of One Piece, I predict Zoro's final bounty will reach 3.8 billion berries, becoming the world's greatest swordsman and one of the most feared pirates to ever live. And finally, we arrive arrive at the captain himself, Monkey D. Luffy, the man who will become king of the pirates. Luffy's bounty is one that could actually break the bounty system, whether it's breaking records or outright shattering the concept of bounties altogether by defeating the world government. His number represents more than just his strength. It represents freedom, legacy, and the end of an era. So Luffy might never get a final bounty number representing his strength, but for the sake of the video, I'm gonna make a prediction. I believe Luffy will hold the highest bounty in history, soaring all the way to 7.5 billion berries, a number that truly cements him as the greatest pirate of all time. So there you have it, my final Straw Hat bounty predictions. Let me know what you think of my predictions down in the comments.